Maryland basketball should have another easy win on Saturday.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at Inside Black and Gold. So make sure you guys head over to insideblackandgold.net for all your latest Terps news. And today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, because right now new customers can finish the season strong with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to get started. Maryland basketball has another very easy, or should be very easy, win on Saturday against Maryland Eastern Shore. So another game that's come around for Maryland basketball. And right now, Maryland basketball don't have too many complaints. We put together a really solid year in the Big Ten. And overall right now, I think we're getting ready for Big Ten play, and I think we're just about ready to go. We're sitting at 10-2 right now, 1-1 in the conference. And I really believe, I said it yesterday, go check out yesterday's episode if you want to hear me talk about what I think Maryland can win the entire Big Ten. I really do believe that we can win the Big Ten title. I think we can a regular season title. I think we can make a run in the Big Ten tournament. I really think the sky is the limit for this team, and I think we have more talent than we had in the last couple of years. Last year specifically, way more talent than we had last year. Team is so much more well balanced. I think we have 5 guys in the starting lineup, all who can drop 20 any night, as well as I think we have a couple guys off the bench that I think are pretty good, even though I think that's still a spot that we're looking to get better at. But I just think overall this year's Maryland team, the sky is really the limit. I think we can make a run for the Big Ten regular season title, for the tournament, Big Ten tournament, as well as I think we can make a run in March. And we're currently the 26th ranked team unofficially in the country. Just not enough votes to get in the top 25. But maybe after this weekend playing Maryland Eastern Shore and probably beating them by a good amount, should be an easy win for the team. They are tricky in a couple of areas. There's a couple reasons why I think they can be a little bit more tricky than a lot of people think. But it should be another easy win for the Terps. I think the Terps are 40-point favorites or something crazy like that. But I do think Maryland basketball, and you say bye to these little easy wins against Maryland Eastern Shore that boost your record, and don't necessarily really boost your resume all that much, but you get rid of some of these easy ones, like a Maryland Eastern Shore, like a St. Francis, like an Alcorn State, like a Bucknell. Those are out the window now, and we're in the Big Ten play after this. So we play Washington and have to travel there, and we have to travel to number 9 Oregon, and then we have number 22 UCLA, and that's just the next 3 games. Still plenty of talent to go on the schedule and plenty of big matchups for Maryland basketball. But the rest of the schedule is Big Ten play. We're done with the lollipops. We're done with the easy wins. But this is the last chance for Maryland to get an easy win against a Maryland Eastern Shore team that's just not very good. Let's just call it spade a spade. And I think it's your last chance to really, I always say it's your last chance in these games when it's the last one before the Big Ten play. I always say it's your last chance to kind of mess with things. See if you like this. See if you like that. And to be honest, I think Maryland has some messing around still to do. I think they're still trying to figure out a couple of things. I still think there's a couple of things that Kevin Willard wants to figure out overall. I still think he's trying to clarify our rotation. I know our starting 5 is really solid, but I think he's trying to figure out the role of Jordan Geronimo, who recently just came back from injury. This game gives you a chance to do that, figure out what Jordan Geronimo's place is on the team, how much is he in the rotation. He was a starter for a lot of last year's team. That shows an improvement from last year's team to this year's team. Now a guy like Jordan Geronimo is no longer just guaranteed a spot in the rotation. Forget the starting lineup, just in the rotation. What do you want to do with Geronimo? Because you've been playing kind of a three-man rotation with Queen, Reese, and Gapare down there. Is Geronimo in that? What's the deal with him? And I think you want to figure out Malachi Palmer, the freshman. Is he a guy that's in a rotation? Is he a guy that's going to play this year for us? I think he's put together good minutes when he plays, and I think he's been better than kind of what I thought. And I don't mind him in a rotation because he's been shooting the ball pretty well, and I think he fits what we want to do off the bench. And I feel like he's a solid defender. I feel like physically he's ready, strong enough, and everything. I don't mind if Malachi Palmer honestly is in the rotation. And then a guy like Deshaun Harris-Smith as well. What do you want to do with a guy like that? Is he going to eventually get cut out? What's the deal? So you can start figuring out some of these things. Some of that stuff's going to have to get figured out along the way. But this is the last game to really test it without having to worry about losing the game. And Maryland shouldn't really have to. Even if Maryland Eastern Shore making the game close would be like a 19-point win against for Maryland. Like, they're just not up to par. They're just not what they're just not what we're going to see for the rest of the season. We're just more talented than them in every single place. And I think that's why you look at Maryland and you say this should be an easy win for the Terps tomorrow afternoon for Maryland basketball. There's really no reason we should have trouble at 12 p.m. tomorrow with this Maryland Eastern Shore team. You look at their statistics so far this season, they have a lot of trouble scoring points. They have the second fewest points per game at 69.7 per game, and they allow the second most points per game allowed in their conference at 80.5. So they only are scoring around 70 points per game, but they're giving up around 80 per game, which is really tough, which kind of shows that they're just not that good offensively or defensively so far this season. And they have played some good teams, but they have not beat a Division I opponent. So it's tough. They're not a very good team. There's a reason Maryland's big time favorites against them. But if you look at some of the teams they play, and this is the reason why I say Maryland shouldn't lose to them, but why they can be a little interesting, a little testy, they can test us a little bit, because they're not going to be surprised by playing Maryland. Honestly, they've done a good job scheduling really challenging games so far this year. When you look at it, they've played Vanderbilt early on in the season. They have played Illinois, who's ranked 24th in the country, who will get a good crack at it. They lost both of those games by a lot. Lost to Illinois 40-87, lost to Vanderbilt 63-102, but they played those teams. They played Arkansas, who they absolutely got smacked by 35-109, but they still played them. They played UConn, the reigning national champs, lost 45-99, but they still played them. So I do think it can be interesting, and I think they can be a little sneaky because they aren't going to be like, oh, they're Queen 5-star freshman. This kid looks a little bit different than what we've seen in our conference. Or, oh, Julian Reese, this big guy down low. Like, they're going to be used to that type of stuff for Maryland basketball. So I think they're ready to play us in terms of they're used to kind of being in that environment and playing in those types of games, whereas other teams that we've played, they didn't play as many high major teams, so they weren't probably used to the Maryland team. But they do have some players on their team that have played at a pretty decent level. Like, they have a kid, Katron Shaw, 6'5" guard, who's doing some decent things, averaging 19.5 points per game. So he's a guy that we really want to limit, a guy that we really want to slow down. And he leads his team in both rebounds and assists per game as well. And so he's a guy that's their best player. If we can limit him, they really just don't have any chance for much offense at all. But a 20-point scorer, and also leads his team in rebounds and assists. So he's a guy to look out for. They have a kid, Evan Johnson, who's also second on the team in points with 13.2, who's a 6-foot guard. And then they have a kid down low, 6'8", averages only 5 points per game, but he's their biggest defensive guy. So to me, their strength is who they've played this year. They've played some good teams, but honestly, Maryland should have no trouble losing or winning this game. You look at their scores and who they've played, there should be really no trouble at all for Maryland basketball to win this game. I think we should dominate them. I don't think it should be particularly close, and it's a 40-point spread or something like that. So if we win by like 20, and then it's like that's honestly them keeping the game close. Believe it or not. But if Maryland wins by 40, 50 points, don't be surprised at all. This team's just not very good. But we'll see what ends up happening. I think it's a good chance for Maryland to show its depth, see what the younger guys can do, and get healthy, get ready to go for the big games. That's really going to push the tournament resume for Maryland. Who are the X factors for the rest of the season? I think two guys are going to decide how Maryland basketball and what their ceiling is and how Maryland basketball finishes the year and just how good we can be. I'll talk about that next. Did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me. I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it easy to track them all down. It's like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place. Whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year, Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved over 500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app premium features. For me, one of the best features is the subscription tracker. I've used it to cancel services I wasn't using anymore, and I've already saved a ton. Plus, with their goal features, I've been able to automatically set aside money for my future and no more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/lockedon today. That's rocketmoney.com/lockedon. rocketmoney.com/lockedon. I think that two players on Maryland basketball team will decide how good Maryland basketball is this year. I think Selton Miguel and Tafara Gapare are going to decide how good we are this year. And I really believe that. When I talk about Maryland basketball ceiling and how good can this Terps team be, I have a pretty good idea that we're going to be good. I felt good about that before the year. I thought people didn't know quite the talent, but I think they're starting to warm up to it. And I think the voters are starting to see that we're a top 25 team, and we're 26 technically right now. But after this week, depending on what happens, we might drop in, we might not. I don't know what the case is, but hopefully over the next couple of weeks, we get in the top 25. I believe that we are a top 25 team, and I believe that we should be in that conversation. So I think I know, like, it's not a case of, oh, Maryland basketball, are they going to be good or not? Like, that's not the case. I know we're going to be a pretty good team, but I've been saying I just don't know quite how good we're going to be. And I think there's two players on our team. Obviously, it doesn't come down to just two guys, but I think there's two guys on the team that really will elevate our ceiling or lower our ceiling this year. And I feel like it's Gapare and Miguel. I think those two guys are really going to determine how good this Maryland basketball team is, how special we are, and what we kind of are later on in the year. I think I feel really good about our starting lineup, including Selton Miguel, who's put together a couple of really good games overall. But to me, I think Selton Miguel is the biggest question mark to me in our starting lineup. Maybe you could argue Rodney Rice, but I feel like Rodney Rice has been fairly good the entire year when you look at the numbers and everything. And he didn't shoot the ball well against Syracuse, but he's a really top-end player. So I know he's going to be able to shoot the ball well. You actually look at it, Selton Miguel and Rodney Rice average the same amount of points. So you could really argue Rodney Rice when it comes to this, but I really believe it's more Selton Miguel. I just believe that Selton Miguel, if he plays how he's been playing the last two games, where he has 24 points against Syracuse, 24 points against St. Francis School, if he continues to do that, and he is a 20-point per game guy, and I don't expect him to be a 20-point per game guy consistently, but I mean like in spots where we need him to get 20 or we need him to get 18 in a game where maybe Queen's not quite 100 or Gillespie's not doing what we kind of want him, or Rodney Rice has a bad shooting day, which happened against Syracuse, which all those things are entirely possible, or Julian Reese is in foul trouble, whatever the case is. If Selton Miguel can be a solidified, really good player in the Big Ten and be a consistent 14, 15 points per game shooter while also keeping up the efficiency, shooting at a high level from three. Right now, he's shooting 44.8% for three, which is really solid. If you can keep that number up, it can even dip a little bit. Like you could probably dip to 42, 41, 40%. That's still really good. But he's been shooting really well from the three from the last couple of games. Syracuse, 66.7%. St. Francis, 66%. Purdue, 40%. Ohio State, 50%. Alcorn State, 57.1% from three. If he can maintain that, Maryland's ceiling climbs so much higher in what they can become with another guy that could shoot the ball at a high level that can get his own shot. I think this team can be really good. A veteran that can do that, your ceiling increases so much when you have another guy like that can play at that level. And I think Maryland goes from a team that, they can be good in the tournament to, they can do something really special, be a top 4 seed, be a top 20 team all year. Like, I think that's what Selton Miguel brings, because right now, I know what Queen can do. He's one of the best players in the country, not just one of the best freshmen. Julian Reese has been one of the best front court guys in the Big Ten. Gillespie's proving himself as one of the best guards in the Big Ten. Rodney Rice can be one of the best shooters in the Big Ten and pure scores. And then you add in another guy that shoots 44% from three that can get his own shot. That's scary for a lot of teams that have to play. And then Tafara Gapare, Maryland's bench, it scares me, and I don't know how good it is. You would think Deshaun Harris-Smith moving to the bench might help him and be able to forward his progression and everything, but I feel like it hasn't really. And Tafara Gapare is a guy that we've seen his athletic attributes and some of the things that he's able to do come out in certain areas. And he's our best player right now off the bench, and he can be special off the bench. And I think for us to increase our ceiling, for us to be an even better team than I think we can be, we need a guy off the bench that can be special, that can come in the game and give us 10 points when we need it, or 8 rebounds when we need it, or 2 blocks when we need it. And that's exactly what Tafara Gapare is, but he's not always like this. It's some games he's like this, like we started the season, he wasn't. And then we got into the stretch where against Bucknell, he had 19 points. Against Ohio State, he had 12 points. And he was shooting really proficiently from the three-point line. And he's done it sometimes, but other times he's been quieter off the bench. And I don't expect him to drop 20 every night off the bench. But if he can consistently deliver off the bench, and he shoots the ball well from three, like I was talking about with Selton Miguel, because he's going to get open looks. Teams are going to be willing to give him the shot. Maryland basketball ceiling just increases, and how good we can be just goes so much higher. And everyone's going to talk about Queen and Reese and Gillespie, and that's who everyone's going to talk about, but those guys are going to perform. It's who are the guys that can elevate your ceiling, guys like Selton Miguel, like Tafara Gapare. And there's a couple more guys on this team, but I think those two guys are the X factors that really can turn this team into something special. Maryland football gets a big return in the transfer portal. Talk about that next. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but it's not too late to get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can finish a strong season with $250 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. FanDuel has so many ways for you to pick up a dub. I love betting on which players will score a touchdown and how many points each team will score. It's thrilling. And not only can you bet on who will win the game, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown. So if this Sunday you want to bet somebody to score a touchdown, you can do that on FanDuel. Or you can bet how many points each team will score and the over and under of the game. And there's so many more things right now with college basketball, the NFL, college football playoffs. There's so many different things. The bowl games happening right now. You can do all that stuff on FanDuel. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. So Mike Locksley in Maryland football got a big keep, let's say, from the transfer portal with defensive lineman Le'Veon Johnson deciding that he is not going to leave, which I think is huge, huge, huge for Maryland football. And I think a lot of people aren't going to headline this, or it's not going to be talked about a ton, but keeping the sophomore was really big for Maryland football. He's going to be a big part of what we do next year. And I've talked about it. He decided, if you guys don't know the story, basically he entered his name in the portal, and I was like, okay, well, we lost another defensive lineman, so we're probably going to need to end up adding another one. And I thought it looks suspect up front, to say the least, with losing Tommy King-Basote, Jordan Phillips, and then I also thought we were going to lose Le'Veon Johnson, but he decided to stay at Maryland. And he said, there's nowhere else I would want to be than be a Terp. And that's the only program he's wanted to play for, which I thought was a cool kind of message to say, this is where I want to be. Let's not mess around. Let's not try and go somewhere else. And in today's college football, I think fans and players around you and coaches can really appreciate guys that just want to be somewhere, forget the money, forget the NIL, forget all the other stuff. What happened to just wanting to be at a school, wanting to be at a program, wanting to be at a specific location? And I think he kind of said that I want to be here, and we need him here. And I think it's a big keep because right now Maryland's the interior defensive line specifically, I don't love, even with keeping Le'Veon Johnson. We picked up a transfer from St. Francis, but still I'm unsure about him. How good is he going to be? He's a big body in there, which I think is big. But Le'Veon has been kind of a rotational piece because we've had Tommy and we've had Jordan Phillips, who are now trying to go to the NFL. And I think Phillips has a chance to get drafted. Won't be easy. He'll be in someone's camp for sure. Has a chance to get drafted, though. We'll see what happens. But I've talked about it. In the Big Ten, if you don't have guys in the trenches that are good, solid players, that are big bodies that can specifically stop the run, you're going to have trouble winning football games. And it's just that simple. It's a running league. It's about offensive line. It's about big bodies, even though I feel like it's transitioned away from that, especially with adding the Pac-12 teams like an Oregon, like a USC. All those teams throw the ball a lot. But in just college football in general, the biggest difference between the upper echelon programs, the Bamas, the Georgias, the Ohio States, it's not about the skill guys. It's about the guys up front. Don't let it mislead you. I know Ohio State has, it feels like 50 million first-round picks at receiver every single year, but the biggest difference isn't at the receiver position. It's the guys up front. Ty Felton and Caden Prather were plenty good last year to make us a good team, but we just didn't have guys up front that could block. And that's the biggest difference. And I believe keeping Le'Veon, even though I'm not saying we're going to be Georgia or Bama, but just getting better up front is just automatically going to make us a better football team. And being able to keep him up front is big because that would have been another hole we had to fill, where now we can add another guy, but it's not just like a fill. It's an add-on, if you guys know what I'm saying, because before we're going to have to fill that spot. Now we can add talent and make it a deeper, better room, and depth is important in that position. You hate for injuries to happen, but that's just what it is in today's game. It can happen. Guys are going to get hurt. Injuries are going to happen. Guys are going to miss time. It's just what it is. As well as those guys need rotation. Those guys get tired. Those guys can't play every down a game. And so it's important to get those guys in and out and bring in more depth is going to, I think, really help us instead of having to add another guy that would probably have to come in and start. So you feel good about keeping Le'Veon, and I think it's a big to be able to keep a guy like that. And I think our team is starting to shape up for how it's going to look next year. That's all we have for today. Thank you for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you for listening to Locked on Terps.